Well, hi, everybody. My name is Anna Padron. I am the engagement coordinator for the Arts and Business Council. We're very excited to be doing these deep dive discussions. They're really roundtable, intimate discussions with featuring a business expert, which I will introduce. The whole idea behind this is to share with everyone vital information to support the arts. So please don't be shy, ask away. Remember, please use the chat while Nicole is doing her presentation, and then later on, we will open up the floor for questions. So get ready to talk, which so far it sounds like we don't have a shy group, so that's great. So I would like to present NICOLE Smith. She is our expert. She is the volunteer and internship service manager at the Adrian Arts Center of Miami-Dade. She has been with the Arts Center since 2012 and joined the volunteer service department in November of 2014. She is currently responsible for managing 300 plus volunteers and interns, which include recruiting, training, and team building. So as a leader of the internship program, serving 13 departments, of which immerse learning experiences to approximately 20 interns per semester. Wow. So before the house went dark, Ms. Smith did work with the front of house team to staff more than 100 performances and programs each year. To add to her extensive 20-year career in a variety of industries such as radio and television, she is an accountability coach for Center's apprenticeship program. I hope I said that right.
Yeah.
For 2 years, she has worked as a mentor with the School to Work Big Brother, Big Sister program, and is a motivational speaker on college campuses for several events, such as Miami Job Corps, Level Up Women Conference, and Level A Legacy of Purpose. So without further ado, I will hand Zoom over to Nicole.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for that introduction. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad that you are here to have this conversation. I am just thrilled that these conversations are able to even be had these days. So just thrilled that you have taken a step towards learning and sharing as we continue to move through what we are trying to do with diversity and inclusion and anti-racism according to just everything that the world is calling for right now. Before I start, I just wanted to know, did anybody have, and this is before like we put everybody on mute and before I start the presentation, but just in general, I wanted to know, did anybody have any specific questions? Was there something specific that you wanted to make sure was answered before this whole session is over? No? Good? Okay. All right. Well then, Anna, if you don't mind, can you just mute everybody and then I will share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, can you see that? Everybody can see it, diversifying your volunteer program? Okay, great.
Yes.
Fabulous. Okay, and I just want to make sure you see the world because last time I did this and the slides weren't turning, so everybody sees the world there? Fabulous, okay. So just to give you a little background about the volunteers at the Arts Center, they represent 29 different countries, speaking 10 different languages, and representing over 29 different professions. So we have a very, very varied and diverse group, which makes everything so much better because you learn so much from so many different people who are not like you. But it also poses other challenges as well. But I mean, if you don't have challenges, you don't grow. So that's just part of everything that comes together with it. And it's really it really is a beautiful, beautiful thing. A couple things I want to talk to you about today regarding diversity. These are some things that we have tried that have found to have worked. I am hoping just to plant some seeds, throw out some ideas, and hope that you have something to take back to start trying to do. You know, I always get very leery when I hear the word expert, because believe me, the expertise I am not really sure about that word. The only thing that really makes me different from you is only that we've been trying a whole bunch of different things and, you know, just throwing stuff up against the wall and see what works. So if you've also been trying, then you probably know just as much as I do. And there's probably a lot of things in here that you've probably already tried and have already done. But I just kind of want to give you all examples in terms of what we've been trying to do and what we continue to try to do and come up with ideas to try new things. So today we're going to be talking about leveling the playing field, creating either an advisory team or a diversity task force, having conversations, that is a huge one, expanding where you advertise your events, posting your events everywhere, and just remembering to take everything one day at a time. So leveling the playing field. So one of the first things that all of our volunteers have to do when they come into the center is they have to go through the ARST Center's diversity, inclusion, and sensitivity training. And they have to do that before, like within their first 60 days of volunteering, because there's like all these little different things that we ask them to do, but it's a required training. And after, if they haven't done it in 60 days, then we kind of put their volunteering on hold until they take the training, because that is how important it is. And in this training, essentially what we do is we have maybe 10 to 15 people. We don't like big groups. We want them to be small and intimate conversations. And we just talk about different things such as microaggressions and talk about unconscious bias and how that can lead us to make decisions that we don't necessarily realize are causing us to maybe offend people on accident and not even realizing that we were doing it. So it's been very eye-opening to have those conversations. And one of the ones that stands out the most to me is there's a room of about 10 of us, and there was a young lady in there, and she was a massage therapist, and she would go into different people's homes and give massages. And she was talking about at one particular house, after she had given the massage, she was packing up her table to get ready to go. And the gentleman was like, do you want me to take your table out to the car? And she was like, no, thank you very much. I can handle it. I'm fine. And she was just expressing how she felt as though he was making the assumption that because she was a female, she couldn't handle it. And it was eye-opening because there was another gentleman in the room, and he was like, man, he was like, I would have never thought that. He was like, because how I was raised, my mother would have, you know, like smacked me upside of my head if I did not offer, because you are a lady and it's chivalrous and it's the thing that I'm supposed to do. And she was like, man, I had never thought of it that way. So it was just literally looking at a picture and seeing completely different perspectives and people gaining that understanding of how we can look at things differently and how to be able to like see things through a different lens, a lot of times also before making snap judgments and basing things off of stereotypes and things like that. So having those intimate conversations and talking about, I would ask questions like, who in this room has been on the wrong side of an assumption? And 9 times out of 10, just about, I was like 8 or 9 people, if there's 10 people in the room, 9 hands go up. And then we talk about that. And the beauty about it is at the end of the day, we realize that as humanity, we are more alike than we are different, because even though there's different cultures, different backgrounds in that room, they're all talking about different ways that they have been on the wrong end of an assumption and how it didn't feel very well, how it didn't feel very good. and getting that understanding of how sometimes we can also do that to other people. It was just mind-blowing, eye-opening, and it really does a lot of transformation. And because a lot of what our volunteers do is front-facing and deals with a lot of guests that are coming into the house, because a lot of the guests that are coming into the house, it gives them a new perspective, and it kind of reminds them not to make snap judgments, not to essentially judge people by their book cover. You know, don't judge a book by its cover. So that's kind of essentially the whole thing. So I would suggest that if you all you know, talk with your HR departments, because our HR department was the one who actually created this, and we created this training initially because it was reactive, because we were having so many complaints, and not a whole lot, but the complaints that we had started to get were more racially charged in nature, in terms of just people being treated a certain way. And then when we would talk to a volunteer, they were like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. That's not even what I meant. And so we found that, so our HR team worked with our front of house team, and they created this training, and they put it together. And then after that, so that's when I decided that every new volunteer coming in needs to go through this training as well, and it has dropped our complaints tremendously. So just something to think about, implementing, trying that out. So we'll move on. Creating an advisory team. So we created an advisory team, and the reason why I have that is about 8 to 10 people who represent every aspect of our volunteer program. So from our youngest volunteer to our oldest volunteer, to a volunteer who's only been at the center for a year, to a volunteer who's been at the center for 5 years, to a volunteer who's been at the center for 10 years. And then we have men, women, gay, straight, Black, white, Latino, Asian, everything that we possibly can to make sure that there is representation when we are making decisions about the group. So we have our tour guides, our admin, everybody. We do our best to try to find somebody that represents everything, or every aspect of the volunteer program. So when we're in a room, when I'm in the room and I'm making a decision, and I'm thinking about making this sweeping decision about X, I ask them about it, and I get their value, I get their input from it. And there's been many times where the advisory team has saved me from making decisions that would have alienated one group or another in the volunteer team. If not necessarily, maybe this particular decision would work well for all of the ushers, but it didn't work well for the tour guides, or vice versa, or just whatever. So it has been extremely helpful, and I am a huge proponent, and I will tell everybody to get an advisory team, because you are getting the input, and you are getting valuable information from the people who the decisions are making, who are going to, the decisions are going to affect, first and foremost. And so having their input, I liked a phrase that I heard, no decision for us without us. So making decisions for volunteers without their input, when it's going to directly affect them, is something that we have started to live by. So I, again, highly encourage everybody to get a team. They will save you and elevate you and really help to take the program to the next level. One thing that I also decided to do, because when we were recruiting, diversity was a very, very huge proponent for me. And with everything that's been going on lately, we've even upped the ante on it. And typically when, in the past when we were recruiting, a lot of what we were doing, I would use the advisory team for, because we would leverage the relationships that we already had. And with that, I would rely a lot on our advisory team and also our current volunteer makeup to reach out to the people who they typically interact with, to encourage them to volunteer. With everything that's been going on, I really, and how much more emphasis we want to put on it, I actually created this task force because I wanted it to have more attention than just one segment of a topic that we talk about in our advisory team meeting. I wanted this was a big enough agenda item that I wanted it to have its own task force. So essentially what I did is I emailed everybody on the volunteer team and I was like, this is what we want to do. And we asked people to who are passionate and really want to diversify our team, if they would want to be members. We had about 5 or 10 people who responded, but there were aspects that I didn't feel were represented. So after people who had responded, then I did a direct outreach to particular people who I feel would fulfill a role that was missing. Because I initially only wanted like 8 to 10 people, because if you have too many people, then you don't get anything done. But because there were so many different aspects that we wanted to make sure were represented, it actually, I think we are up to 18 people, but it has been so well worth it and so on point. And the same with the advisory team, the same for the diversity task force. We meet once a month, and we have goals, and we go according to plan in terms of what we want to do regarding our goals. And then we meet once a month and do a follow-up. What were we able to accomplish? What is the next steps? And then we take the next month to do it. And so what I've done, I've asked everybody who's on the task force really for 4 hours a month, essentially 1 hour a week, because I didn't want to overwhelm anybody, and I didn't want them to feel burdened with trying to do this, because that's not going to be helpful, because then the work's not going to get done and we're not going to be able to move forward. So it kind of really worked out with the fact that we have 18 different people. And if we have 18 different people committing 4 hours a month, whatever 18 times 4 is, my math is not, I'm a volunteer manager for a reason. I am not an accountant, but whatever that is, now that is at least that many hours. I think it's like, I don't know, whatever. It's that many more hours per month that we are zoning in and focusing on this each month, whereas maybe we were only doing 2 or 3 hours before. And because of that, that change is going to inevitably come. It's going to be, it's probably going to take some time, but that's okay. The fact that we are making those steps is what is important. Having conversations, speaking with administrators, reaching out to organizations that, and communities that would be able to fulfill what you feel your organization is missing. But I like to caution people, though, don't go in with like I need to diversify my program, so come on in and let's do this. Like, that's not what it's about. It's about learning and serving first. Reaching out to communities, learning and understanding what their needs are, how they function in the community, and then going back and looking internally in your program to see if something that they do by volunteering with your program fulfills a need that they have. Because then it's not all about me, I need to diversify my team, I need to diversify my team, because that's not really their problem. You diversifying your team isn't their problem, but they might have other needs that by volunteering with you, it could fulfill that need. And then now it's a win-win, and it's not just about you trying to diversify your team. One of the ways that we did this, because for me, part of the diversity that we're working on is that I would like to have more deaf volunteers. And so we reached out to some organizations who work with the deaf community. And we are in the process of working through those things. We're in the process of learning about the deaf community and what they need to function and what they can do and what they can't do. What they can't do is actually a lot more limited than what we think. And the people were so excited from the organization that they came in and they actually did a 101 on this is how you work with deaf people. And then they gave us some an ASL class and taught us basic sign language basic theater sign language. And now our volunteers weekly are practicing basic theater sign language so that when we do reopen and we do see somebody that comes in and we're able to identify them as deaf, or they identify as deaf, we can at least basically communicate with them. And that's going to make them feel at home. And that's going to make them want to volunteer with us, because we took that extra time to make them feel welcome. And so it's those little things and putting in that work and having those conversations, which is really, really, really important. But understanding that when you're going into it, don't go into it with a selfish intent. Really, really go into it with trying to understand who they are and what they need, because that's going to give you a lot of answers of maybe why they're not coming to the table to come and volunteer. The next part is having internal conversations. So you're doing all this work, you're reaching out to different communities, and you're finally getting them to come through the doors and volunteer. Well, you have to also take care of home, and you have to take care of the volunteers that you currently have, because change is difficult. And if you start having a lot of different people start coming in to an environment where it's already been established, you can't expect there not to be any type of friction or challenges and things like that. So one of the things that we've done is, especially when it came to everything that's been going on along like the anti-racism line of thought, I found this amazing arts video of this gentleman who was talking about anti-racism and the challenges that the special challenges that it faces in the arts. And if you are coming from an arts background and you know anything about the theater, in the theater they talk about the triple threat, you know, which is you can sing, dance, and act. And in this talk, the gentleman was talking about the new triple threat, which was COVID, financial stability, and racism in the arts. And it was absolutely powerful. So I sent that video out to all of our volunteers and I asked them to watch it. Then we set up a Zoom call and we're like, we're going to talk about this. Very uncomfortable, very scary, because as soon as you say racism, you know, people have very visceral reactions to it. So one of the things I had to learn, and then I'm going to implore upon you, is you're gonna just have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, regardless what it is, because as soon as it's a new environment or just a different type of change, a different type of people that are coming in, no matter what, it's going to be uncomfortable. But just get comfortable being uncomfortable and work your way through it. So we had this meeting, and essentially it was designed after something that our CEO actually did with us with our staff meeting. So I kind of just replicated it for the volunteers. And like I said, I was like, okay, we're going to have this conversation and we're going to talk about racism and how does it affect you? How have you been affected? Who here has experienced it here? And like I said, I was nervous. I had my finger on the end meeting button just in case it got crazy. But the beautiful thing about it is people who are coming to these conversations, I've realized, because this is about my 4th or 5th one, they're coming because they want to learn. They're coming because they want to understand. I have not been to one yet, knock on wood, where somebody's just coming in to just cause problems. And so it was a beautiful conversation. People were able to share. It was intense, but one of the things that we also said is when we started the conversation, we are not recording, because I wanted people to feel like this was a safe space. So, and I wanted people to have the opportunity to make a mistake and to say the wrong thing and it be okay. So long as it wasn't like intentionally an attack, that's fine. So people were allowed to express themselves. And when we came out of that meeting, it was a whole different outlook. And to the point where the volunteers were asking, can we do this more often? Please don't let this be the last time we have this conversation. okay, no problem. Afterward, I was all sweating and everything, but it ended up going really, really well. So I want to encourage you, like maybe if in the organizations that you're with, if that hasn't happened, like maybe from the top down, it hasn't happened as yet, but it's something that you do want to have that conversation. Talk to your HR person, talk to them about what you want to do, and maybe even have them in on the meeting to help regulate and, and help facilitate even as well. I'm blessed in that, and fortunate that my volunteer program actually falls under HR. So I'm constantly under that training, and I'm in trainings, and I'm talking to my boss, who is the VP of HR, all the time. So I had a level of comfort of being able to do that, especially after watching how our CEO did it. But so if you don't have that, talk to your HR professional. I'm sure that they would be more than willing and happy to have those discussions and to help back you up with it. Expand where you're advertising your events. Many people, so like she had mentioned before, maybe she didn't, I don't remember. My background is in radio and TV. And when I was in radio and TV, I learned that by law, every radio and TV station has to have a community service component to their station. Otherwise, like they will be not in compliance. So reach out to these stations, find out when their community programming is. Say you want to schedule an interview. And the thing is, they're always looking for really good content too, especially if you're in a nonprofit organization type situation and you're trying to get the word out about what you're doing, events, things like that. Now, I'm going to warn you, the time slot isn't, you're not going to be like on the radio drive time, 4 to 6 on a Monday, but do not underestimate that, because we did this with an event, actually with one of our orientations, and we put all the information out there and we talked to all these stations and they aired it. And I think the airtime for one of them was like 6:30 on a Sunday morning. Great. So 3 days later, I'm in the building and a volunteer comes up to me and she was like, Nicole, we heard the interview about the orientation. She's like, yeah, my daughter and I, we were up and we were packing to get ready to go. Quite frankly, I don't remember what she said after that. All I was like, why were you up at 6:30 on a Sunday morning? But guess what? The people who needed to hear it heard it, because she was the demographic, she was the people we were trying to reach, and she heard it. So do not discount the crazy times that they will put them on there. Also, I would suggest don't only do it for your orientation. Especially if you're a nonprofit, whatever free community event that you have, continue to just go back and talk about those events, because maybe it's a free festival that you're having and you're like, this is our organization and we're having this free festival and we want to invite you out, right? So you target the radio stations that target the audience that you are looking for. And now they're going to start hearing about the events that you have. They may even actually start showing up. They come to the organization, they come to the event, they have an amazing time, they interact with some of the volunteers. Now they want information about volunteering. And then eventually, when it does come time for you to recruit and you put the word out, we're having open orientation for new volunteers. Now you're going to be able to reach people, but not only just when you did the orientation, but because you've been reaching out all throughout the season, all throughout the year about other things as well, and serving. We're doing free taxes, we're doing whatever, but you're reaching out the entire time so that when you are ready to make the call, people will have already known about you. They may have already experienced you. You have to continue to deposit. So when it's time for you to make a withdrawal, you have something to pull, because you can't get nothing out of nothing. If the bank account says 0, you can't make a withdrawal and have nothing in there. But if you've been constantly making deposits, when it comes time to draw, you're going to be able to pull something out. Post your events everywhere. So all of these stations have community events calendars. So get an intern, get a volunteer to look up every radio station, every newspaper, every government agency, anywhere where they are listing free community events or just your community events in general. Sometimes they have parameters, but you can look into it. List them everywhere. They are more than happy, because the more that their event calendar looks full, more people are going to go to their website, which is going to drive up their traffic, and they have more variety of things to offer. So look into all of them. They either put them on their page, or they have a Facebook page, or they're using social media, something, but they have community event places where you can put stuff. So search them out and start sending your events there as well. Post your event on social media. If you have a marketing department or social media department, start talking to them and seeing what you can do about having posts created to help to advertise your volunteer team. But they literally have in Facebook, they literally have like a target, like who is your target audience? Who are you trying to reach? So look at different places that you can target in order to get different types of volunteers in. It's called retargeting, and I know you have all seen it. Maybe you've gone online recently and you were looking for Post-its, and you did a Google search for Post-its. Now, no matter where you go, or if you had a conversation about it, now it's showing up in your Facebook feed, it's showing up in your Instagram feed as ads, and all of these different places. It just kind of keeps showing up. It keeps following you until you click on it. So it's almost kind of like being a stalker. So it's a little creepy, but it's also kind of just gently putting it in like, hey, we're here, we're here. So just a thought, just putting it out there. Yes, you can do social media organically to get the word out, but typically social media doesn't work when it comes to recruiting volunteers. It is very much a social, it is very much a who you know, mouth to mouth, word of mouth type of recruiting that will always win out. So I'm not saying not to do it, but when you're targeting, it's at least now it's more awareness, and people are like, huh, I didn't even know that that organization had volunteers. I didn't even know that that organization did these events. That may not be the thing that gets them in the door, but at least now they're aware. And that is half the battle. So I encourage you, talk to your social media team, talk to your marketing team, work with them to see how they can help you get the word out. Do your best to make sure that they see representation of themselves. So in this particular photo, one of the things that I have really been working on for our team is really making sure that people with disabilities feel welcome. And we've been really trying to do our best with that. And because the question to me was always like, how come people who might be deaf or blind or in a wheelchair, how come they don't ever apply? How come these people don't ever come to our orientations? And after doing some research, it was because we didn't have messaging, keyword messaging that let them know that we were welcoming. There was words that were missing that what we found out, people who are blind and people who are deaf and people who have disabilities actually literally look for in the messaging that clues them in that they will be welcome. So it was like, oh my gosh. So we got that messaging up on the website. And then in this particular case, we were trying to do a video for our docents, our tour guides. And because of the day and the timing of it, and we had to have like a videographer come in at a specific time, we called on our volunteers to help us create this video. And basically we had them go on a tour of the facility, and we had our volunteers give the tour. On a bittersweet note, great for me, really bad for the volunteer. The night before we were supposed to do this, something happened, he broke his foot, and he ended up, or he hurt his foot and he ended up, sprained something, but he ended up in a boot, as you can see here. So when he showed up, I was like, oh my goodness, is everything okay? And he's like, yes, I'm fine. He's like, I'll still be able to do the tour, but I'll be, hopping around. And I was like, would you be willing to do it in the wheelchair to show our guests who are wheelchair bound, or to show somebody who's in a wheelchair that they could volunteer here and they could give the tour even if they are in a wheelchair? And he was like, sure, I'll do it. So he did the whole thing in the wheelchair, and we were able to capture this picture that shows you are welcome here. And I know sometimes people were concerned, well, yeah, but he wasn't really, and what happens if they come to the tour and now he's walking? And then, like, well, we will just be straight up honest. He was temporarily disabled. He could not walk, but that didn't keep him from doing what he was passionate about and doing what he loved by giving tours and educating people about the beautiful buildings that we have, and having the opportunity to continue to give back to his community, even though he had something that kept him from what he normally does. So it was awesome and amazing, and it was an opportunity for us to capture that. What I also loved about this picture is when we did a call for volunteers, we had every shape and size and creed and everybody show up. This was not planned, but it couldn't have happened any better. And when I look at this picture, it just warms my heart, because people will see themselves, and it will be able to be even that initial connection to let them know that they are welcome. Now, they're not going to know that they're volunteers, but the fact that they are, even as guests, it's like, wow, we are welcome. So the thing that I really want to talk to everybody about as we go through all of this, you've heard a lot of different things, but just remember that this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. I don't know if many of you have run a marathon or a 5K, but a lot of times, like, you'll line up at the line and the gun will go off, and you will see these people take off and sprint, and they're just like out the gate, woo, and they're just taking off. And then, like, 3 miles down, they're either like on the side of the road, they're cramping, they're walking, they can't catch their breath because they tried to approach a 26-mile run like a 10-second sprint. What's going to happen? You're going to end up hurting yourself, and you're going to get frustrated, and you may even want to quit. Remember, you have to take this one step at a time. A marathon, I believe, is 26 miles, right? Yes, people finish to the end, but who knows how many individual steps it took to get there. Nobody like jumped on a motorcycle or got on a bike and rode halfway there, or got on a skateboard. That wasn't a thing. It might have been 26 miles. It might have been, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours running, which, side note, there's a lot of other things I'd rather be doing than running for 2 or 3 hours, but I digress. Either way, who knows? Maybe it was, I don't know how many steps it is. Maybe I have to ask my friend, because she does them all the time. Maybe it's 500,000 steps. But remember, it's 500,000 individual steps, one at a time, in front of each other, to get to the desired result. So do not be frustrated. Do not give up. Take your time. And a lot of times, haste makes waste. So be methodical about what you're doing. But I just encourage you to keep on doing it. Don't do like one step and then be like, woo, I trained, I'm good, I'm ready for that marathon. No, you have to keep going. And that is just what I really want to impress upon people, because in a lot of these talks I've heard that people feel like they're just not doing enough, and they've tried this and they're just not doing enough. Well, the fact that we're even having this conversation is huge. And that's step one already. So do not discount that. And let's just say you take one step a day for 365 days. Well, you are now 365 days further along than you were a year ago. And let's just be real. Those 365 steps may have just got you like from the front door to the mailbox, maybe even across the street. But that doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is you're further than you were a year ago. And then you continue that pace. And when by the time you look around in a year, in 2 years, you're going to be in a different place. You're going to be better off than where you are today. So you have to remember that and keep that in the back of your mind. So again, take it one day at a time. Am I aging myself here? Who remembers this? Who remembers this? Who's going to admit it? Okay, yes. Remember, take it one day at a time. We can do this. We can work through this. We will be a team. And you know, yes, it can be frustrating. So I encourage people to, if this is something that you are doing for your volunteer program, talk to other volunteer managers who are doing the same thing, because there is nothing like a support group that you can pick up the phone and be like, oh my gosh, this is what I tried and this is what happened. Have somebody there to pick you up, and you're not going to do it alone. You're not going to do it alone. It's just not even going to work that way. We have to work together and be that support and be that teamwork for each other as we continue to move forward. And as you can see, we will cross the finish line together. So I will talk about this part a little bit later, but if you want to reach out to me, this is my contact information, and I'll also give it to Anna as well, and we can put it, I think there's going to be like a follow-up email. The reason I had put the journals in there is because I created these journals in order to encourage people as they are trying to do their everyday jobs and whatever it is. And one of them that I created is literally, it's called a success tracker, and it's literally to write down every win that you have had. And that's it. You only write down wins, so that on the days that you are frustrated or the days that you're just like, I can't do this anymore, you pick that up and you look at how far that you've come to encourage you to keep going. Because Les Brown says, hope in the future gives you power for today. So understanding and knowing where you want to go and looking back to encourage yourself to see where you have come is going to continue to propel you forward. So with that being said, because I don't know if I've run out of time, so I'm going to kind of shut it down. And Anna, are there any questions? I will stop sharing my PowerPoint. Okay.
So we do have a question, and we'll open up the mic from Jody. She has a question about if the HR team created the training, which I'm going to guess it's the diversity and inclusion training, do they help facilitate it?
So it depends. The way it was set up at our organization is our HR team trained different people in different departments so that the burden didn't fall just on one person. And then those people trained out. So in our particular organization, we have like 4 or 5 different people who can do the training. I do them as a way to connect and bond with my volunteers. So even though other people can, it's a way for me to get to know my volunteers on a more personal level. So I prefer to do it, but we have about 4 or 5 different people. So we have HR and then different people in different departments that are able to teach out the training.
Did that answer your question, Jody? I saw you also had your hand raised. I didn't know if you wanted to ask another question or you're...
That was from, I was one day at a time, yes.
Oh,
yes, okay.
It did answer my question, but it didn't, you know, I'm just one person and I'm part of a really large organization that has a humongous HR department that really doesn't affect my organization. So basically they don't have one. So for us solo people that are in really small situations, which I imagine there are others on the call like that, do you have any go-to resources or websites, or I'm sure you do?
So when you say that you are I kind of didn't understand. So you have this like super big HR department and then it doesn't, I don't know, can you say that again?
So I'm at the Lowe Art Museum, which is part of the University of Miami. So the University of Miami has a humongous HR department, but it's not really about the Lowe. You know what I'm saying? They don't work at the Lowe.
Got it. Got it. Well, can you reach out to them? Because I'm sure at this point, with all the diversity and inclusion stuff that is going on, I'm sure somebody is doing something, and just talk to them that you want to tap into whatever the efforts that they are making campus wide, and make sure that you all as part of the system is not getting left out, that it's trickling down as well. And maybe that might even be like, oh yes, we need to make sure to connect that, because you don't want to do your own thing. You still want it to be tied to the overall, you know, mission and look of the school. So I would suggest just maybe just reaching out and just saying, are we doing anything campus wide that we can implement here, and start there and see where you might, see if you can make that connection. But in terms of go-to resources, I know it's not the best suggestion, but I would just say Google and see what you can find. Reason being, because since our HR department did it, we have connection to the SHRM trainings. And so all of that came through SHRM. But you have to have a membership for that. And we were able to get it through our HR department. So there's a lot of places that I can tell you to go, like there's Star 12 and SHRM, but they're membership based. But since our HR department already has it, I was able to tap into that. But with everything that's going on in the world now, I'm sure if you do a simple Google search, you'll be able to find something and be able to come up with something. But I would highly suggest just trying to tap into and reaching out to your HR department, because they might be more willing than you think.
Jody, what you might want to do also as an alternative is go to the volunteer services office under student services, because they have to do that kind of training over in the union.
Thanks.
Thank you. See, I didn't even know that was a thing, and now I do. Thank you.
I think Ernie's showing his you.
There it is. Love it.
So
I may have been there for 10 years plus.
May have. So we have another question from Lilia Garcia. Go ahead, Lilia.
Hi. I have a different challenge. We have 1,000 volunteers, and I mean 1,000. I'm with the Coconut Grove Art Festival. So we have a 3-day event, but here's the challenge is we get a lot of kids and we get a lot of adults, but they never seem to come together. The kids are with the kids doing their thing, and the adults do their thing, and they don't seem to work together at all. The reason I'm in this call today is the person who did our volunteer program is no longer with us. So I've taken it over. Okay. So I would love to do some kind of program or workshop or something, so that there is no that really distance between the two types of volunteers. Any suggestions?
Okay. So I just want to make sure, because I think you kind of cut it out for a moment, that you want to like lessen that gap between, when you say kids, like what ages are you talking about?
High school. They're high school, some college.
Okay.
But you have the adults.
Okay, so
and the adults are a little older. They're like, 35 and up. And the kids are 19 and under, 19 to 15.
Right. Okay.
And everything is like,
and you want them to work.
For instance, one of the perks for volunteering is there's food. And the woman who was there before, she has kid food and adult food. It's the same food, but she separates them, So there's no interchange of, maybe a kid can be helping the adult volunteer, or the adult could do something with kids. There isn't any of that. We have almost every high school is represented. University of Miami is represented, and then the adults are in another side. They do the same work.
Okay.
Am I worried about it? Maybe I shouldn't even worry about it. Maybe I should just leave it alone. I don't know.
Well, I mean, do you think it would be a better event and volunteer opportunity if they were able to work together? Or
it would make it simpler, I think, so that the volunteer manager doesn't have to come up with things for the kids and things for the adults, and it would just flow. It should be a more flowing kind of thing. Maybe I do need a task force. Maybe that was a great idea for me, where I put the two together.
Yes. I think that would be huge, because then you can have them in the room and talk about what's important to you, how can we work together, and always go back to the organization's mission. At the end of the day, this is what we need to accomplish. How can we go about doing that together? And maybe even there could be a dual mentorship, right? Because you're going to have older people who have life experience, who have all of this knowledge that they can share, and you have younger people who are in the midst of like the tech boom and all these new ideas, and putting them in a place where they can learn from each other, and then taking that to use to come together to serve the mission of the festival. That could definitely be something that works. But I think in that particular case, definitely if you can do that advisory team and come together and have a conversation, it will help solve, because they might feel polarized. Maybe it's like that because that's just how it was created in the past, and nobody really cared to bring them together. Or they have those unconscious bias and preconceived ideas. Oh, old people can't do anything. Oh, young people can't do anything.
Exactly.
And
that's what I see now happening. So
if you have an orientation session, the organization Nicole was mentioning, SHRM, the Society of HR Management, you probably have one or two volunteers that are already members, given the makeup of Coconut Grove. So SHRM does have training modules about age differences, about boomers and millennials, and having them play in the same sandbox.
That's great. Never heard of them before, so that's fabulous.
Yeah, SHRM, SHRM. Society of HR Management.
Thank you
There's
so
also
much.
ASTD, the Association for Training and Development. They have stuff on that too.
Great. Because we are a 3-day event, but we have ongoing activities all year long. We have a full-time professional gallery. We do a lot of other events that we use the volunteers for. And we're doing the same thing. We say, well, this is for the kids, or this is for the adults. It shouldn't be that way. It should be.
Right. So it's starting from the top down. So if you fix it up here, it will trickle.
This COVID thing is perfect because it gives you a great excuse to try new things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's really like, go for it.
Of course.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions before we wrap up? We started Miami time, so we'll end Miami time.
Ernie, I'd like to hear a little bit more from you, because you have a lot of fabulous ideas. What is your background, and what compelled you to join us this morning? I'm taking notes from you, my friend.
You'd be the only student probably this whole week who will. Hey, I have no illusions. No, I'm a college professor by trade. I'm a business professor with a doctorate in org leadership, but I also do a lot of corporate training. I have a webinar in 2 hours with stockbroker wannabes. So I've taught of more than a few HR related classes in terms of compensation, intrinsic, extrinsic motivation, that kind of thing. And as a professor, we hosted SHRM meetings on our campus. So that's how I know. A colleague of mine was really big into SHRM back when I was in the Great White North of Connecticut shoveling snow. Instead of enjoying, Vegas pools. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of work now being done in terms of workshops, programs. around bringing different groups together. So Lilia's question about millennials and boomers is a big thing, that there's a lot of work being done. So there's plenty out there. And like I said, given the makeup of the Grove, you're going to have people who are either SHRM or ASTD members, I would bet, in your volunteer corps already.
Yes, yes. And then you can leverage that. Absolutely. Take a look internally to see what you have and use that to your advantage, because I'm sure they would love to put that volunteer skill to use.
Right. I mean, I've done workshops on unconscious bias for organizations. And again, you're so close to UM. There's plenty of professors, plenty of people.
Well, Ernie, come on down. Come on down. Come visit us.
Ernie, come on down. I'm in East Everglades. I'm by Finca in La Canaria. I'm not that far.
I mean, hey, there's Zoom. It's okay. We can make it happen through Zoom.
I know my way around campus, and who's doing anything in person now anyway?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, is there anything else that you would like? Is there anything else you'd like to share idea-wise? Because clearly you are a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so excited and glad and thrilled that you joined us. Is there anything, in addition to anything that I said, that could also help? Anything that you've tried that you have felt has worked?
Well, I mean, one of the organizations that I'm on the board for now, Prospanica, down here, that's the Hispanic professional organization nationwide. We're trying to recruit all, board members too. Everybody right now, everybody has a problem with, not a problem, a challenge with recruiting board members, because people are anxious. Some are unemployed. Even six-figure earners that are friends of mine have been either laid off, repositioned, moving somewhere else. I mean, everything is sort of 52 pickup right now. And it's right now, a lot of people are very uncertain about committing to anything. Heck, I just moved my Halloween cruise that got canceled to next August out of Barcelona, because hopefully we'll be cruising by then. Knock on wood. But, everybody right now is in either, even if they're not in flux, they feel they might be. Because I have friends all over the country who are saying, yeah, I have a job now. I don't know if I'm going to have a job next week.
Right. Yeah.
And so right now, people are very anxious about committing the 3 T's, time, talent, and treasure, when they don't know what's going to happen next week. That's the feedback we've been getting in trying to recruit new board members is, I'd love to, but heck, 2 of our board members are moving because their jobs have moved. Their jobs have literally forced them to move because they're closing up shop here or repositioning human assets. Right now, it is what it is.
With that being said, though, honestly, with the craziness that is, but having this new Zoom situation, like, do you find that that is something that people can do? Because I know even the board that I'm on, we had to start obviously meeting virtually, but because we started meeting virtually, our attendance actually went up because it was easier for people to meet, and we can still have the conversations and still contribute. But in that case, if you move to Timbuktu, as long as you have Wi-Fi and you get the time zone correct, you can still participate.
Oh, I've been teaching online for over a decade. So I've used GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, Skype, before this happened. Because Zoom was like, who cares? Who uses that? That's for play. That's a play thing for 5 people to get together and talk about Discord. It's kids talking about Discord on Zoom. Woo. So yes, you get attendance of the people who are there, but if you need to bring in new people, that's the other side of the coin. Is our attendance has flourished this year, of course, because what excuse do you have?
Right, where are you?
But the flip side is, so existing board members, yes. I mean, seriously, what are you doing? I mean, seriously. But
it beats driving, that's for sure.
Is the other side. I'm sorry.
I think we're going to be
I've appreciated. I'm sorry.
One
thing that I've appreciated with Zoom is that you don't have to fight traffic. Have you noticed our traffic? Barely any. I love it.
Yeah. For sure.
So,
I know we're getting ready to wrap up, so I just wanted to make sure, does anybody have any other questions about anything that we talked about, or maybe that we didn't talk about that you were hoping that we could address before we close out?
I do. I have a question. Sorry. If anyone else wants to go, because I talked. Sorry. I just want to know, this is an uncomfortable question, but since you said
comfortable being uncomfortable.
to have those. Yeah. So since you mentioned the diversity and inclusion training that's mandatory, I wonder how you handle that when your volunteers are people of color, because I've taken implicit bias trainings and other trainings where they have literally said to me, this training is for you because you're not a person of color. And so how do you, has it said to you, I don't need this training, or how do you handle that?
So, okay, so I'm going to answer this in two different ways. So because of how we have it set up, it is a part of if you want to be a volunteer at the Art Center, it's part of like the 5 or 6 things that you have to do off of a checklist to be a volunteer. So if they don't want to do it, then I'm like, that's totally okay. Nobody's forcing you, but then maybe this isn't the right place for you to volunteer. It may not be a right fit, and that's okay. Because yes, the training is for everybody, because everybody has that unconscious bias and everybody has those preconceived ideas and perceptions. So I cannot tell you that I have been in a situation where somebody was like, I don't need this. If it's a volunteer type, and is it a current volunteer that you already have that you have been working with, or this was just like in a training and somebody said that?
No, just in situations where we've had a group discussion, even with students, and it's, a mixed group of people, and they'll literally say, I don't need this because I am a person of color, so I have no bias. And so I feel like, as a person who, a Caucasian woman, I know you could just say, I admit I don't have all the answers, but like you said, we're just trying and we're working on this together, and how to present that. But it is on the top of my mind all the time, especially when running a diversity and inclusion training. I know Ernie wants to add. Ernie's going like this.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Ernie, if you want to chime in, go for it.
Jody, here's my response to this person. I'm really interested that you think that diversity is only about skin color. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. That's a perfect answer, because I was going to say something along the lines of, well, he just said it. It's not only just about color, it's about so many other things. So it absolutely is.
Multiculturalism, and it runs for 15 weeks. It's not just about color. Heck, you know what? Show them the clip from Avenue Q about the song about everybody's a little bit racist. They'll get it. They'll get it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It just seems like all the trainings that have been offered have been only focused on race and not other things.
And that's the challenge, right? Because a lot of people, that is where they're focused. And a lot of people are focused on that right now because people are trying to deal with anti-racism, because that is the thing. So if you're going to be having a workshop and it is about anti-racism, dealing with Black and white, then that needs to be clearly stated. And like, here today, we are talking about this.
Whoa. Hold on, we live in Miami. Black, white, Cuban, Puerto Rican, Haitian, Asian, Colombian, it's not monolithic.
No, but I know, I'm a Black Latina. I get it. I know. But what I'm saying though is, to answer what your question was, like, because even though we have that understanding, especially like in Miami, we have that understanding. A lot of other people outside of Miami don't have that understanding. But if it is something where that's the door that you have to address, right? If today we're talking about specifically black and white. I didn't necessarily say Black American. I just said black and white. We're going strictly color. And if that's what we're addressing, then that's what we're addressing. But if it is diversity, you have to understand that diversity is more than skin color, just like Ernie was saying, because there's a lot of other things that are like, because like for me, we're trying to diversify our program, but we're focused on diversifying according to ability, not necessarily skin color or culture. Just because of the fact that we are in Miami, the nature of it, people are going to show up already diverse. That's just because of how we, at least culturally and skin color diverse, even though we still want to work on it, because I feel that there's still a lot of, we can get other cultures in there, but that's a whole nother conversation. But yes, if you are there and somebody is saying that, yes, like just like Ernie had said, I think that's the perfect response. Is it's interesting that you feel that it's only about color. Explain that to me. But if you are in a room and you are talking about black and white, then you're talking about black and white. But if they have to understand that if they're attending to something that's diversity, it's deeper and it's more encompassing than just color. But believe me, I get it, because I am a Black Latina. Because the thing is, a lot of times, people, they don't see me as Black Latina. All they see me as Black, period. I don't have a chance to open my mouth and start speaking. I don't have a chance to start talking about my culture and where I come from. When I walk in the room, all they see is Black, period. So that, understanding that and being in that position is something completely different. And it is about that person. If they say, oh, I'm a person of color and this isn't, well, at the very least, invite them. Well, glad that you're here. Help educate us then. If this, maybe you don't have bias, and just as those conversations keep happening, ask them questions, or ask the whole room questions. Who's been on the wrong side of an assumption, and hopefully their eyes will start to open, that just the fact that they even said something like that is a direct result of the fact that they have it and that they are in that position. I don't know if that helps.
It does. Thank you.
I have to run, guys, but I'm so grateful for this wonderful discourse and dialogue. Thank you so much for including me. As you can see in the back, the dog is getting the McFidgets and needs to go out. So namaste. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Casey. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us.